With version 6.4 finalized banners and confirmations for future units like Nicole for Varka and Linnea for Zibai, the situation around these DPS units is getting pretty strange. Especially for someone like Zibai, whose current teams with Columbina and C6 4-stars are already as strong as the other top DPS. The fact that she might get another dedicated support is honestly wild. So today, it's time we analyze both DPS units, their advantages, disadvantages, and their future value. Let's start with Zibai. Like I've said before, Zibai is currently one of the best DPS units in the game, and the fact that she's Geo makes that even more impressive. Right now, her top teams rank around the same level as Nefer and Flins when you run Columbina, C6 Illuga, and Goru. And a huge part of that comes from how insane these 4-star supports become at higher constellations. Goru is already a solid option even at C0 because he provides decent team-wide defense buffs. But at C6, he becomes completely different, giving a massive 40% crit damage bonus. And the same story applies to Illuga. At C4, he adds even more defense support. And at C6, he goes absolutely insane, giving around 50 crit value worth of stats, alongside additional elemental mastery. When you combine C6 Goru and C6 Illuga, you're looking at almost 90 crit value worth of buffs, plus defense, plus elemental mastery. That's exactly why Zibai looks so broken right now. And in the long run, it's very likely you'll keep getting more constellations over time, which makes her scaling even crazier. And that's before we even talk about Linnea, who is also looking like another support for her. We'll come back to that. But before we continue, quick reminder, if you're out of Primo Gems and you're planning to top up or save for future banners, do check out Loot Bar. They're offering some insane discounts for the current banners, making it one of the best ways to top up. Just use my link below, enter your UID and server, and it should arrive in minutes. They're safe, trusted by millions of players, and they also have 24/7 customer support. Alright, now back to the topic. Let's talk about Varka's current situation. Right now, Varka is roughly as strong as Flins without Columbina, and that is already very strong, especially considering he's Anemo. Because Hoyo typically designs Anemo DPS units to be more player-friendly and exploration-focused, with some of the coolest kits in the entire game, instead of only chasing pure damage. We saw this with Chaska, who is still one of the most flexible characters in the game, with insane exploration value, but falls short in damage compared to DPS units like Kinich and Mualani. And compared to recent DPS units like Flins and Nefer, who are restricted to a single reaction and a single team archetype, Varka is way more flexible and versatile. He gives you far more team options, which is especially valuable for players starting fresh, or players who need a versatile DPS that can slot into many different teams. Varka works with some of the strongest supports in the game, Durin, Mavuika, and Bennett in Pyro teams, and supports like Yellen and Farina in Hydro-based teams. With all of this, Varka is already strong, and he can potentially match the Nod Cry DPS units after Nicole releases, assuming her kit is strong enough.
But here's the big downside. Varka looks like a more expensive unit to fully optimize, mainly because of how dependent he is on his signature weapon. Right now, his signature is doing roughly 30% more damage compared to his best 4-star option, Serpent Spine. And with the signature weapon, he can reach damage levels similar to top DPS units, even without Columbina. Now add Nicole, who is most likely going to be a dedicated Pyro support for Monopyro teams, possibly providing strong attack buffs. And since Varka benefits a lot from attack, that could push his total team damage much higher. We've already seen how a single support can completely change a team's ceiling. Now, I've seen a lot of comments saying that even if Varka does similar damage to Not Cry DPS, his teams are too expensive. And I don't fully agree with that, because honestly, both sides are expensive. Most meta teams in the game right now are expensive. And Zibai's free-to-play friendly team is not as free-to-play as it looks. It relies heavily on 2 C6 4-star units. And without those C6 constellations, you lose a massive amount of damage. You're losing that extra 90 crit value, extra defense, and extra elemental mastery, which is huge. So in practice, Zibai with C6 Goru and C6 Illuga ends up being comparable to how premium Varka feels. And if Linnea becomes a 5-star support for Zibai, then the team gets even stackeder. At that point, you're looking at Zibai, Columbina, and Linnea. 3 limited 5-star characters. And for most players, it's unrealistic to get all 3. Because we're getting Zibai and Columbina back-to-back, and then Linnea only 1 version later. That's 3 limited characters in 3 versions. That is not free-to-play friendly at all. Meanwhile, Varka's team with Venti, Durin, and Bennett can actually look cheaper for long-time players. Most players who've been playing for years already have C6 Bennett, and many already own Venti. So in some cases, that team can be easier to complete than a fully optimized Zibai setup. And don't forget, Varka has far more team options overall. Furina, Yelan, Mona, and many more. Especially for low investment players or newer players, versatility matters. So if we're comparing premium teams, I don't think either side is truly free to play. And it's not really fair to judge one as too expensive while calling the other cheap. The one clear advantage Zibai has is better free-to-play weapon options, because for Varka, his 4-star weapon options are weak, and his signature weapon matters way more.
Now let's talk from a pure damage perspective, and how strong both of these DPS units can become once their new supports arrive. Starting with Varka. With Nicole, we can reasonably expect a similar jump to what we saw with Flins and Nefer after Columbina released. In other words, Varka could land in that same top tier as the Nodcry DPS units. But it's going to depend heavily on one thing: how strong Nicole actually is. And the reason that matters is because Bennett is already so broken that it's genuinely hard to imagine a support that gives better raw buffs than him. So if Nicole is designed as a stronger Bennett, the biggest way Hoyo can push her value is not only through buffs, but through her own personal damage. Because if she provides Bennett-like buffs while also adding meaningful off-field damage, that alone will push Varka's team DPS much higher than people expect. Now let's switch to Zibai. Like we said earlier, her C6 4-star supports are already insanely strong. And because of that, it's very hard to imagine a new support that straight up power creeps her existing setup. For Linnea can be better than C6 Goro, she would have to compete with massive defense buffs, around 40% crit damage, and even extra elemental mastery value. And personally, looking at how strong Zibai already is, I think Linnea is more likely to act as a replacement option, rather than a huge direct upgrade on top of an already stacked team. So what does all of this mean in simple terms? It means once Linnea and Nicole arrive, Zibai and Varka are most likely going to end up in the same overall damage bracket as Nefer and Flins. Basically, all of them become equally broken. And yes, Varka might still end up slightly lower, simply because he's Anemo, and Hoyo rarely lets Anemo DPS units sit at the absolute top. But in practice, it will not matter. These damage levels are already beyond what you need. For a general player, even 120,000 team DPS is more than enough to clear all content comfortably. And we're talking about teams in the range of 120,000 to 150,000 DPS. That is overkill, and it won't become not enough anytime soon. So honestly, my recommendation is simple: pull who you actually like. Don't overthink the damage gap, because all of these new DPS units are strong enough to carry your account. And if you like Varka, just pull him. We're not getting another unit this creative anytime soon. Dual weapons, a unique playstyle, and one of the coolest kits we've seen in a long time. I hope this video gave you a clearer picture. Make sure you're subscribed, and I'll see you in the next one.